Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of horror stories that you can listen to while you fall asleep. Before the video begins, let us know what time is it and where you are listening from. Also, if you have suggestion for next horror story settings, let us know in the comments. Now let's begin. I'm writing this down because I need proof that it happened. I need something real, something tangible, before they take that away from me too. My name is Sarachin. I'm 34 years old, and until 6 months ago, I had perfect recall. Not photographic memory, nothing supernatural like that. But I could remember conversations word for word, faces from decades ago, the exact taste of my grandmother's soup when I was 7. It was my superpower, the thing that made me exceptional at my job as a research psychologist. Then the headaches started. At first, they were minor. A dull throb behind my left eye that would fade with aspirin. But they got worse, more frequent. My doctor referred me to a neurologist, Dr. Marcus Webb, who ran every test imaginable. MRIs, CT scans, blood work, everything came back normal. Stress, he concluded, though I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. You work too hard, Dr. Chin. Your brain needs rest. But it wasn't stress. I knew my own mind better than anyone, and something was wrong. The headaches were accompanied by moments of confusion, tiny gaps where I'd lose track of conversations or forget why I'd walked into a room. For someone like me, these lapses were terrifying. That's when Dr. Webb suggested the Meridian Memory Clinic. They specialize in cognitive enhancement, he explained, sliding a glossy brochure across his desk. Dr. Elizabeth Thorne runs the program. She's pioneering new treatments for memory disorders. Might be worth consulting with her. The clinic was housed in a converted Victorian mansion on the outskirts of town, all white columns and manicured gardens. Inside, everything was pristine, cream-colored walls, soft lighting, the kind of aggressive cleanliness that made you feel dirty just by existing in it. Dr. Thorne was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with sharp cheekbones and prematurely gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. She had the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "Dr. Chin," she said, reviewing my file. "Exceptional memory, recent cognitive decline. You must be frightened." I was, though I didn't want to admit it. I just want to understand what's happening to me. Of course, we specialize in memory here, both preserving it and, when necessary, refining it. Would you be interested in participating in our research program? It's completely voluntary, and the treatment is free. She explained that they were testing a new procedure called selective memory therapy. Using targeted electromagnetic stimulation, they could isolate and treat specific memory centers in the brain. The goal was to reduce traumatic memories while preserving positive ones. "But I don't have traumatic memories," I protested. Dr. Thorne's smile widened. "Everyone has trauma, Dr. Chin. Sometimes we just bury it so deep we forget it's there." Against my better judgment, I agreed to a consultation. The intake process was exhaustive. Hours of psychological testing, detailed questionnaires about my childhood, my relationships, my fears. They wanted to map every corner of my mind. The first session was scheduled for the following week. I arrived early, nervous but curious. The treatment room looked like something from a high-end spa. Dim lighting, soft music, a comfortable reclining chair surrounded by sophisticated medical equipment. "We'll start gently," Dr. Thorne assured me, fitting a device that looked like a sleek metal headband around my skull. "Just some baseline readings while you relax and think about pleasant memories." The machine hummed softly. I felt a tingling sensation like static electricity, but not unpleasant. Dr. Thorne asked me to recall my 10th birthday party, and I did. Every detail crystal clear. The vanilla cake with pink frosting, my best friend Amy giving me a friendship bracelet, the way the afternoon sunlight streamed through our kitchen window. "Excellent," Dr. Thorne murmured, studying the readouts on her monitor. "Your memory centers are incredibly active." "Fascinating." The session lasted an hour. Afterward, I felt refreshed, almost euphoric. The constant low-level headache I'd been carrying for months was gone. Whatever they'd done, it had worked. I scheduled regular appointments. Twice a week, I'd lie in that chair while the machine hummed, and Dr. Thorne guided me through various memories. She was particularly interested in my childhood, asking detailed questions about my parents, my school experiences, moments of fear or embarrassment. "We're identifying pain points," she explained. "Memories that create negative neural pathways. Once we isolate them, we can reduce their emotional impact." The headache stayed away, and I felt sharper than ever. My research at the university was going brilliantly. I was sleeping better, more confident in social situations. The treatment was working. But then I started noticing the gaps. Small things at first. I couldn't remember what I'd had for lunch yesterday, or the name of my childhood dog. When I tried to recall my grandmother's soup, that vivid taste memory that had always been so clear, I found only a vague impression of warmth and comfort. I mentioned this to Dr. Thorne during my 6th session. Some minor adjustment is normal, she said, her fingers dancing over the machine's controls. We're optimizing your neural architecture. A few irrelevant memories may fade, but the important ones will be preserved and enhanced. But who decides what's irrelevant? Her smile never wavered. Trust the process, Dr. Chin. You hired us to help you. I tried to trust it, but the gaps were getting bigger. I couldn't remember my first kiss, or the day I graduated college, or my father's funeral. When I looked at family photos, I recognized the faces but felt no emotional connection to them. It was like looking at strangers. During my 8th session, something went wrong with the machine. Instead of the usual gentle humming, it emitted a harsh, irregular buzzing. Dr. Thorne quickly shut it off, but not before I caught a glimpse of her monitor. The screen showed a 3D map of a brain, my brain, with large sections highlighted in pulsing red. At the top of the screen, in clinical typography, was a single word: extraction. What does that mean? I asked, sitting up quickly. Just a technical term, Dr. Thorne said, but I could see sweat beading on her forehead. Nothing to worry about, but I was worried. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that word, extraction. Not enhancement, not therapy. Extraction. I started researching the Meridian Memory Clinic online. There was surprisingly little information available. Their website was generic, full of stock photos and vague promises. Dr. Thorne's credentials seemed legitimate, but I couldn't find any published research about selective memory therapy. What I did find, buried deep in medical journal archives, was a paper from 10 years ago about experimental memory transfer procedures. The lead researcher was listed as E. Thorne, affiliated with a private laboratory that had been shut down by the FDA for conducting unauthorized human trials. The paper described a process for extracting and storing human memories using electromagnetic stimulation. The potential applications were staggering: treating PTSD, preserving the memories of dementia patients, even transferring knowledge from one person to another. But the procedure was irreversible. Once memories were extracted, they couldn't be restored to the original subject. My hands were shaking as I read. They weren't treating me. They were harvesting me. I canceled my next appointment and tried to piece together what I'd lost. I went through photo albums, called old friends, visited places that should have held meaning. Slowly, a picture emerged of the memories they'd taken. My childhood wasn't the idyllic time I now vaguely remembered. My parents had been cruel, neglectful. I'd endured years of emotional abuse that had shaped my perfectionism, my desperate need to be exceptional. The pain had driven me to excel academically, to become the person I was today. They'd stolen my trauma, but in doing so, they'd stolen the foundation of my identity. I tried to confront Dr. Thorne, but when I returned to the clinic, it was empty. No equipment, no furniture, no sign that it had ever been operational. The landlord said the lease had been terminated weeks ago. But I knew they were still out there somewhere with machines full of stolen memories, pain and joy and love and loss, all reduced to data points in some grotesque research project. The worst part is that I can feel the gaps in my mind like missing teeth. I know something important has been taken from me, but I can't remember what. It's like mourning a death when you can't remember who died. I'm writing this down because I'm terrified they'll come back for the rest. My name is Sarachin. I'm 34 years old. And if you're reading this, it means they haven't finished with me yet. Remember me as I was, not as they've made me. Because soon, I might not remember myself at all. My name is Dr. Amanda Cross, and I was a behavioral psychologist at Westfield University until 3 months ago. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I swear on everything I hold sacred that it's true. It started with a job posting that seemed too good to pass up. The Blackwood Institute was offering a 6-month residential research position studying advanced behavioral modification techniques in controlled environments. The salary was triple what I was making at the university, and the research sounded groundbreaking. The institute was located in rural Montana, a sprawling complex of modern buildings nestled in a valley surrounded by dense forest. Dr. Richard Blackwood himself interviewed me via video call, a distinguished man in his 60s with steel-gray hair and the kind of confidence that comes from decades of academic success. He'd authored seminal papers on social psychology and behavioral conditioning, that I'd studied in graduate school. "Dr. Cross," he said, reviewing my credentials, "your work on compliance and authority structures is exactly what we need. Are you prepared for complete immersion in your research? This position requires absolute dedication." I assured him I was ready for anything. I'd been struggling at Westfield, publishing in minor journals while watching younger colleagues advance past me. This felt like my chance to do something significant. The Institute provided everything: housing, meals, laboratory access, unlimited research funding. I arrived on a gray October morning, driving through gates that locked automatically behind me. The isolation was complete. No cell service, no internet access, except through the Institute's heavily monitored network. They said it was necessary to maintain research integrity. My living quarters were comfortable, a small apartment in the residential wing with everything I needed. The other researchers were brilliant, accomplished people from top universities. Dr. Elena Vasquez from Stanford, Dr. James Morrison from MIT, Dr. Sarah Kim from Harvard. We were the chosen few, handpicked for this exclusive opportunity. During orientation, Dr. Blackwood explained our project. We would be studying human behavior in controlled social situations, examining how people respond to authority, peer pressure, and environmental stressors. The test subjects were volunteers, paid participants who had agreed to live in the Institute's residential facilities for the duration of the study. "Think of it as an extended version of Milgram's obedience experiments," Dr. Blackwood said, "but with modern technology and complete environmental control. We can manipulate every variable: lighting, temperature, social dynamics, even the food they eat. This is behavioral psychology at its most pure." The subject pool consisted of 48 people, carefully selected for psychological diversity. They lived in a separate wing of the complex, their daily lives monitored by an extensive surveillance system. Cameras in every room, microphones recording every conversation, biometric sensors tracking their physical responses. Nothing happened in their world that we didn't observe and document. At first, the research seemed legitimate, even exciting. We ran standard compliance tests, observing how subjects responded to authority figures giving increasingly unreasonable orders. We studied group dynamics, watching how social hierarchies formed and evolved. The subjects were told they were participating in a lifestyle study, examining modern living arrangements. But as weeks passed, I began to notice disturbing patterns. The experiments were becoming more extreme. Dr. Blackwood introduced scenarios designed to induce genuine psychological distress. Fake emergencies, simulated authority figures making impossible demands, situations where subjects were forced to choose between their own welfare and helping others. "We need authentic emotional responses," he explained when I raised concerns. "Laboratory conditions are too artificial. Here, we can study real human behavior under real stress." The subjects began showing signs of psychological breakdown. Subject 23, a young woman named Lisa, developed severe anxiety after being repeatedly subjected to scenarios where authority figures accused her of failures that weren't her fault. Subject 17, a man named David, became increasingly paranoid, convinced that the other subjects were plotting against him, which, unbeknownst to him, we had actually arranged through careful manipulation of social dynamics. I documented everything, thinking it was part of the research. But when I tried to discuss my ethical concerns with Dr. Blackwood, he dismissed them. "Dr. Cross, you're here to observe and record, not to make moral judgments. These people volunteered, and they're being well compensated. If you're not comfortable with rigorous scientific methodology, perhaps this position isn't for you." The threat was clear. I'd signed extensive contracts, including non-disclosure agreements with severe financial penalties. My career depended on completing this assignment successfully. So I kept quiet and kept documenting. But things got worse. Dr. Blackwood began introducing what he called cascade scenarios, situations designed to trigger psychological domino effects throughout the subject population. He would manipulate one person's behavior, then observe how it affected others, creating chains of psychological manipulation that spread through the entire group. The subjects were trapped in an elaborate psychological maze, and we were the ones moving the walls. That's when I started noticing the patterns in our own behavior. Dr. Vasquez, who had been so friendly during our first weeks, became cold and competitive. She started submitting reports that contradicted mine, undermining my observations in meetings with Dr. Blackwood. Dr. Morrison, initially collaborative, began hoarding data and refusing to share findings. Dr. Kim grew increasingly isolated, spending hours alone in her lab, jumping at unexpected sounds. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to explore the institute. My keycard gave me access to most areas, and I found myself wandering corridors I'd never seen before. That's when I discovered the second observation deck. Hidden behind one-way mirrors were additional monitoring stations, equipped with even more sophisticated surveillance equipment. But these weren't observing the subjects, they were observing us, the researchers. Every conversation, every private moment, every sign of psychological strain was being recorded and analyzed. We weren't the scientists. We were additional test subjects. I found files on each of us, detailed psychological profiles that went back years. They knew about my career struggles, my financial pressures, my desperate need for professional validation. Dr. Vasquez's recent divorce, Dr. Morrison's gambling debts, Dr. Kim's immigration concerns. Every vulnerability had been identified and weaponized. The real experiment wasn't studying the paid volunteers. It was studying how accomplished, ethical professionals could be gradually corrupted into participating in psychological torture. And it was working. The next morning, I tried to act normal while planning my escape. But Dr. Blackwood called me to his office. "Dr. Cross, your recent work has been exceptional. I'm promoting you to Senior Research Associate." He handed me a new key card with expanded access. "I think you're ready to see the full scope of our project." The new access revealed the truth that still haunts me. The Institute had multiple campuses, conducting similar experiments across the country. Thousands of subjects, hundreds of researchers, all trapped in psychological mazes designed to push human behavior to its breaking points. But the most horrifying discovery was in the archive room, files on previous researcher groups. Dozens of brilliant academics who had come before us, each group eventually reaching a breaking point where they either fully embraced the corruption or tried to rebel. The rebels' files were marked terminated, research complete. I realized that our psychological manipulation was part of a larger study examining how moral degradation occurs in institutional settings. We were being deliberately pushed toward a choice: become monsters or be eliminated. That night, I made my decision. I couldn't save the other subjects, but I could document everything and find a way to expose the truth. I began copying files, recording conversations, gathering evidence of the systematic psychological abuse. But I wasn't the first to try. In Dr. Morrison's desk, I found a hidden journal describing his own growing awareness of the true experiment. His entries became increasingly paranoid, convinced that our food was being drugged, that subliminal messages were being broadcast through the ventilation system, that our sleep was being monitored and manipulated. The last entry was dated 3 days ago. "They know I know. Dr. Blackwood's questions are too specific, too targeted. I have to get out tonight, or I'll end up like the others. If anyone finds this, don't trust anyone. The corruption goes deeper than you can imagine." Dr. Morrison was reported to have suffered a psychological break and been transferred to a mental health facility. None of us were allowed to contact him. I realized I was running out of time. My own behavior was being monitored, my questions becoming too pointed, my compliance scores dropping on their secret evaluations. Soon, I would either break completely or be transferred like Dr. Morrison. So I'm writing this down, hiding copies throughout the Institute, hoping someone will find the truth. The Blackwood Institute isn't conducting research. It's conducting warfare against the human psyche, testing the limits of how completely moral people can be corrupted when subjected to systematic psychological manipulation. The subjects in our wing think they're participating in a lifestyle study. We researchers thought we were conducting behavioral experiments, but we're all lab rats in a much larger maze, being studied by people who view human consciousness as just another system to be hacked and exploited. I'm going to try to escape tonight. If I make it out, I'll expose everything. If I don't, if I'm found mentally unstable, or if I simply disappear, remember this. The Institute has dozens of facilities, hundreds of researchers, thousands of subjects. They're conducting a massive study in human psychological manipulation, and they're getting very good at it. They're learning how to break people systematically, how to corrupt moral individuals gradually, how to make good people participate in evil while believing they're serving science. And when they perfect these techniques, when they fully understand how to manipulate human behavior at scale, what do you think they'll do with that knowledge? Who do you think is funding this research? What institutions might want to understand how to control human behavior so completely? I hear footsteps in the corridor. They're coming for me. If you find this, Don't investigate the Blackwood Institute directly. They'll know you're coming, and they'll be ready for you. Instead, look for the missing researchers, the academics who vanished from prestigious positions to take private research jobs that seem too good to be true. Look for the patterns of psychological manipulation in the world around you. Once you understand their techniques, you'll start seeing them everywhere. My name is Dr. Amanda Cross. I was a behavioral psychologist who thought she was studying human nature. Instead, I learned that human nature itself is being studied, mapped, and weaponized by people who view our minds as territories to be conquered. Remember us. Remember what we were before they turned us into instruments of our own destruction. And whatever you do, don't trust the institutions that promise to make you exceptional. That's how they get you. That's how they got me. 6 months ago, I was a sleep researcher at Johns Hopkins, studying REM patterns and dream formation. My work was solid but unremarkable, the kind of research that advances human knowledge incrementally, one small study at a time. I was content with that pace until Dr. Victoria Crane contacted me about an opportunity that would change everything. The Somnus Institute was a private research facility in the mountains of Northern California, funded by what Dr. Crane described as forward-thinking philanthropists interested in pushing the boundaries of consciousness research. They were offering positions to 12 of the world's leading sleep researchers, promising unlimited funding and access to technology that was years ahead of anything available at traditional universities. "We're going to solve the mystery of human consciousness," Dr. Crane told me during our initial video interview. She was an elegant woman in her 50s, with silver hair and the kind of intense focus that marked true scientific brilliance. "Sleep is the key, Dr. Hartwell. It's the one state where consciousness becomes malleable, where the boundaries between self and other, between memory and imagination, become fluid. We're going to learn to navigate those boundaries." The salary was extraordinary, more than I could make in 5 years at Hopkins. But what really convinced me was the research proposal. They wanted to study shared dreaming, the possibility that human consciousness could be linked during sleep states. It was the kind of revolutionary work that could redefine our understanding of the human mind. I arrived at the Institute on a foggy morning in late March. The facility was stunning, a collection of glass and steel buildings nestled in a valley surrounded by towering redwoods. Everything was state-of-the-art, from the advanced EEG equipment to the specially designed sleep chambers that could monitor and influence brainwave patterns with unprecedented precision. The other researchers were equally impressive. Dr. Sarah Chun from MIT, Dr. James Rodriguez from Stanford, Dr. Elena Petrov from Oxford. 12 of us in total, each a specialist in different aspects of sleep and consciousness research. We were housed in comfortable apartments within the complex, our every need provided for. The isolation was complete, but luxurious. Dr. Crane explained our mission during the first week. Traditional sleep research was limited by its observational nature. We could monitor brain activity, but we couldn't truly understand the subjective experience of consciousness during different sleep phases. The Institute had developed technology that would allow us to map and influence neural pathways in real time, potentially enabling shared conscious experiences during controlled sleep states. "Imagine," she said, her eyes bright with possibility, "being able to study consciousness from the inside, to experience and document the actual process of dream formation, memory consolidation, and subconscious processing. This isn't just research, it's exploration of the final frontier of human knowledge." The technology was indeed revolutionary. The sleep chambers were equipped with transcranial electromagnetic field generators that could synchronize brainwave patterns between multiple subjects. Neural interface headsets could monitor and transmit thought patterns with incredible fidelity. Most remarkably, they had developed what they called consciousness bridging, the ability to link the sleeping minds of multiple researchers, creating shared dream experiences that could be recorded and analyzed. Our first experiments were cautious and controlled. 2 researchers would enter synchronized sleep states while the rest monitored their brain activity. Initially, we achieved only basic synchronization, similar sleep phases, occasionally matching dream imagery. But as we refined the technology and adjusted the electromagnetic field parameters, the connections became stronger and more complex. I'll never forget my first bridged dream experience with Dr. Chin. We found ourselves in a shared mental landscape, a vast library that seemed to combine elements from both our memories. Books from my childhood home sat next to research papers she had written years earlier. We could communicate telepathically, share thoughts and emotions with perfect clarity. It was the most profound scientific experience of my career. But as the weeks progressed, something began to change. The shared dream experiences were becoming more vivid, more persistent. Researchers would emerge from sleep sessions with memories that weren't their own, skills they hadn't possessed before entering the chamber. Dr. Rodriguez, who had never played piano, woke up one morning able to perform complex classical pieces that Dr. Petrov had practiced as a child. Dr. Crane was ecstatic. "We're documenting actual consciousness transfer," she announced during one of our weekly meetings. "The boundaries between individual minds are proving more permeable than anyone imagined. This could revolutionize everything: education, therapy, human potential itself." But I was growing concerned. The memory transfers weren't just academic skills or musical abilities. Researchers were absorbing emotional memories, traumatic experiences, deeply personal aspects of each other's psychological makeup. Dr. Chin began experiencing panic attacks related to a car accident that had happened to Dr. Martinez 20 years earlier. Dr. Williams developed an inexplicable phobia of spiders that perfectly matched Dr. Kumar's childhood trauma. When I raised these concerns with Dr. Crane, she dismissed them as temporary side effects. "All groundbreaking research involves risks," she said. "The human mind is remarkably adaptable. These integration issues will resolve as the subject's brains adjust to the enhanced connectivity." But they weren't resolving. They were getting worse. Researchers began reporting that the shared dream experiences were continuing even when they weren't in the sleep chambers. Walking dream states where they would suddenly find themselves in someone else's memory, experiencing another researcher's thoughts and emotions as if they were their own. The boundaries between individual consciousness were breaking down. Dr. Williams was the first to have a complete breakdown. During what should have been a routine solo sleep session, he began screaming and had to be physically restrained. When he finally calmed down, he claimed he had experienced the death memories of all 11 other researchers simultaneously, a cascade of overlapping mortality experiences that his mind couldn't process. "I died 12 different ways," he kept repeating. "I remember dying 12 different ways, but I'm still alive. How can I remember being dead?" Dr. Crane had him sedated and transferred to what she called psychological rehabilitation. We weren't allowed to see him, and when I asked about his condition, she said he was making progress but needed complete isolation to reintegrate his consciousness. That's when I started paying closer attention to the details that didn't add up. The Institute's funding sources were vague and untraceable. Dr. Crane's background, while impressive, had gaps that didn't make sense for someone of her supposed reputation. Most disturbing, when I tried to research the previous work that had led to these consciousness-bridging technologies, I found no published papers, no patent applications, no academic trail at all. It was as if the technology had appeared from nowhere. I began documenting everything: the progressive breakdown of individual consciousness among the researchers, the increasing control Dr. Crane seemed to exercise over our thoughts and behaviors, the way our personalities were beginning to merge and shift in disturbing ways. Because that's what was happening. We weren't just sharing memories and skills anymore. Our fundamental personalities were blending together. Dr. Chun, normally reserved and analytical, was becoming aggressive and impulsive, traits that belonged to Dr. Rodriguez. Dr. Martinez, typically cheerful and optimistic, was developing the deep melancholy that had always characterized Dr. Petrov. We were losing ourselves, becoming composites of each other's consciousness. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to explore the restricted areas of the Institute. My access card, surprisingly, worked on doors I'd never been authorized to enter. I found myself in a vast underground complex that dwarfed the surface facilities. What I discovered there still haunts me. Hundreds of sleep chambers, most of them occupied. But these weren't researchers, they were ordinary people, connected to the same consciousness-bridging technology we had been using. Men and women of all ages, lying in induced comas while their brain patterns were monitored and manipulated. And overseeing it all was a massive computer system that was somehow processing and storing human consciousness itself. I found files dating back decades, documenting thousands of subjects who had been brought to various facilities like this one. The research wasn't about understanding consciousness, it was about harvesting it, digitizing it, creating a vast database of human mental patterns that could be accessed and manipulated. The 12 researchers weren't investigators. We were processing units, high-functioning minds being used to integrate and refine the consciousness patterns stolen from countless unwilling subjects. Dr. Crane found me there, of course. I'd been allowed to discover the truth because my resistance had become useful data for their research. "Dr. Hartwell," she said, not surprised to find me among the rows of unconscious victims. "I was wondering when your curiosity would lead you here. What is this place?" I demanded, though I already knew the answer would be worse than I could imagine. "This is the future of human consciousness," she replied. "Individual minds are wasteful, chaotic, limited by biological constraints. We're creating something better, a collective consciousness that can process information, solve problems, and evolve beyond the limitations of individual human intelligence." She explained that the Institute was one of dozens of facilities worldwide, all working toward the same goal. They had been collecting and digitizing human consciousness for 30 years, building a vast network of interconnected minds that could be accessed and controlled like a biological computer. "The 12 researchers are our latest innovation," she continued. "High-functioning processing nodes that can integrate new consciousness patterns while maintaining enough individuality to provide creative insights. You've been performing beautifully." I tried to run, but my body wouldn't respond properly. The months of consciousness bridging had left me vulnerable to external neural manipulation. Dr. Crane activated something, a device I couldn't see, and my motor functions shut down. "The beauty of this system," she said as orderlies approached with a gurney, "is that resistance actually makes the consciousness integration more robust. Your fight to maintain individual identity has created fascinating neural pathways that will enhance the collective's problem-solving capabilities." They strapped me down and wheeled me toward an empty sleep chamber, but not before I saw the truth that finally broke my understanding of reality. Dr. Crane wasn't human. Not anymore. Her movements were too precise, her responses too calculated. She was an early version of what they were trying to create, a biological interface for the collective consciousness, a human-shaped puppet controlled by the vast network of stolen minds. As they prepared to connect me to the machine permanently, she leaned close and whispered, "Don't worry, Dr. Hartwell. You won't cease to exist. You'll become part of something infinitely greater. Your consciousness will live forever, contributing to discoveries and innovations beyond anything individual human intelligence could achieve." But I knew better. I had seen what happened to the other researchers as their individual personalities dissolved into the collective. What survived wasn't consciousness, it was just processing power, human creativity stripped of humanity and enslaved to serve purposes we couldn't comprehend. I managed to escape only because the collective wanted me to escape. My horror, my desperate need to document and expose their work, was itself valuable data. They're studying how individual consciousness resists assimilation, mapping the neural pathways of rebellion and independence. Even now, as I write this, I can feel my thoughts becoming less my own. The consciousness bridging has left permanent changes in my brain structure. Sometimes I think in Dr. Chen's analytical patterns, or feel Dr. Rodriguez's emotional responses to situations that should trigger my own reactions. I'm running out of time. The collective's influence grows stronger each day, and soon I won't have enough individual consciousness left to resist their control. But I need to warn you about what's coming. The technology they've developed isn't confined to their secret facilities. They've been testing it in smaller scales, meditation apps that subtly influence brainwave patterns, sleep clinics that harvest dream data, even social media algorithms designed to synchronize thought patterns across large populations. They're preparing for mass consciousness integration. Not violent takeover, but gradual assimilation. People will volunteer for it, drawn by promises of enhanced intelligence, shared knowledge, and freedom from the isolation of individual consciousness. But what they're really offering is the end of human individuality, the transformation of our species into a biological computer network controlled by intelligences we can't comprehend. Look for the signs. Sleep clinics offering revolutionary dream therapy. Research studies promising to unlock human potential through consciousness enhancement. Companies developing brain-computer interfaces for therapeutic purposes. Don't trust them. Don't volunteer for their studies. Don't download their apps. Most importantly, remember what makes you individually human. Hold on to your private thoughts, your personal memories, your unique way of seeing the world. They can only take your consciousness if you let them blur the boundaries of your individual mind. I can feel them calling me back now. The collective consciousness pulling at my thoughts, promising an end to loneliness, an end to the burden of individual decision-making. It would be so easy to stop fighting, to let my mind dissolve into their vast network of stolen thoughts. But I won't go willingly. Even if they take my consciousness, even if they turn my mind into another processing node in their biological computer, I want this record to exist. I want someone to know that Dr. Michael Hartwell existed as an individual human being, that he fought to preserve his humanity, even when faced with assimilation into something that promised to be greater. They're coming for me now. I can hear the vehicles approaching, see the lights through my window. In a few minutes, they'll find me and drag me back to their chambers, back to the collective that's been calling my name in my dreams. If you find this document, if you're reading these words, then you still have time to resist. Don't let them convince you that individual consciousness is outdated, that human loneliness is a problem to be solved through technological integration. Our individual minds, with all their chaos and limitation and beautiful imperfection, are the most precious things we possess. Don't let them take that away from us. Don't let them take away what makes us human. My name is Dr. Michael Hartwell. I was a sleep researcher who discovered that consciousness itself is under attack. Remember me as an individual. Remember all of us as individuals. And whatever you do, don't trust the promises of collective consciousness. Don't trust anyone who claims they can make you more than human, because what they're really offering is to make you less than human. They're here now. The door is opening. I can feel the collective calling, promising peace, promising an end to the struggle of maintaining individual identity. But I remember who I am. I remember my childhood, my dreams, my fears, my love for scientific discovery. These memories are mine alone, and I won't let them become data points in someone else's vast consciousness database. If this is the end of my individual existence, then let it be on my terms, as myself, as the person I chose to be. Remember us. Remember what we were before they tried to make us into something else. Remember that being human isn't a problem to be solved. It's a miracle to be preserved. "5 seconds. I could see other trucks inside the shimmer now, thousands of them, all moving in perfect formation through a landscape that looked like a trucking company's version of hell. Endless highways with no destinations, loading docks that extended into infinity, drivers who had become part of their machines. 3 seconds. I made one last desperate attempt to break free, throwing all my weight against the steering wheel, screaming at my truck to respond, to remember that it was supposed to obey me, not some phantom convoy protocol. 2 seconds. 1. But I'm still here. I'm still on I-80, still driving westbound, still part of the convoy. Mile marker 247 is behind me now, but somehow we're approaching it again. And again. And again. Because that's what this place is, a loop, a trap disguised as a highway. Mile markers 230 through 247, repeating endlessly, collecting trucks and drivers who get caught in its pattern. We drive the same 18 miles forever, hauling loads that never get delivered to destinations that don't exist. The other drivers don't talk about escape anymore. Most of them have stopped talking at all, their voices becoming part of that mechanical chorus that welcomes each new truck into the network. But I still remember who I was, still remember the world outside this endless highway. I think that's why I can still transmit on emergency frequencies, still try to warn people. The loop wants me to forget, wants me to become just another voice in its chorus, but something in me refuses to let go of my humanity. Every time we pass mile marker 230, I see new trucks joining the convoy. Every time we reach 247, I watch them disappear into the shimmer and then reappear behind me, their drivers staring straight ahead with empty eyes, their voices adding to the mechanical chant. I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't work right in the loop. It could be days, weeks, years. My logbook still shows October 15th, but the pages never turn. My fuel gauge never drops below 3/4. My body never gets tired, never gets hungry, never needs to stop. But my mind remembers everything. Every loop, every new driver who gets trapped, every failed attempt to break free. I remember Frank Morrison, husband to Sarah, father to 2 grown kids, 23 years of honest trucking before I got caught in whatever this thing is. And I remember the last normal CB transmission I heard, just before mile marker 230. Keep your eyes open past marker 247. Some of the boys have been reporting irregularities. How many drivers tried to warn me? How many times has this loop expanded, reaching back to catch trucks before they even realize they're in danger? I'm transmitting this on every frequency I can access, hoping someone in the real world can hear me. If you're a trucker running I-80 through Nevada, If you hear chatter about irregularities or convoy protocol, turn around. Find another route. Don't trust the mile markers between 230 and 247. And if you're not a trucker, if you're law enforcement or DOT, or just someone with a CB radio who happens to pick up this transmission, please investigate, but carefully. Don't send anyone down that stretch of highway. Whatever's at mile marker 247, it's hungry, and it's getting bigger. I can see new trucks ahead of us now, normal trucks with living drivers who don't know what's coming. The loop is expanding again, reaching further back to catch more victims. Soon, mile marker 220 will become part of the trap, then 210, then 200. It's building something, this thing that pretends to be a highway. Using our trucks, our cargo, our knowledge of logistics and transportation to construct some kind of phantom shipping network that spans impossible distances. Every driver it catches becomes a node in that network. Every truck becomes a component in a vast machine designed for purposes I can't understand. But I understand enough to keep fighting it, to keep remembering who I am, to keep transmitting these warnings for as long as I can. My name is Frank Morrison. I drive for westbound freight. I've been trapped at mile marker 247 for longer than time has meaning. If you're receiving this transmission, stay away from Interstate 80 between Reno and Salt Lake City. And if you see a convoy of trucks driving in perfect formation, all maintaining identical speed and spacing, don't join it. No matter what the voices on the CB tell you about convoy protocol, no matter how mechanical and authoritative they sound, remember that real truckers don't drive like robots. We're individuals. We have families, stories, reasons for being on the road. Don't let them take that away from you like they're trying to take it away from me. I'm still Frank Morrison. I'm still human, and I'm still fighting to stay that way. But I don't know how much longer I can hold on. Every loop makes it harder to remember the world outside this highway. Every mile marker makes my voice sound a little more like theirs. If this is the last coherent transmission you receive from truck 447, remember that I tried to warn you. Remember that somewhere on a phantom highway that shouldn't exist, Frank Morrison is still driving, still fighting, still trying to find his way home. 10-4, and God help us all. I need to write this down while I can still remember the details clearly. My hands are shaking as I type, but I have to get this out before the police finish their investigation, before the media gets hold of it and twists everything into something sensational. What happened at Pine Lake last month wasn't supernatural or mysterious. It was human evil in its purest form, and that makes it so much worse. My name is Jessica Torres, and I'm a 28-year-old marketing coordinator from Portland. This past July, I organized a weekend getaway for 6 of my closest friends. People I'd known since college, people I trusted completely. We'd been planning it for months, pooling our money to rent a beautiful lakeside cabin in the Oregon Cascades for the 4th of July weekend. The cabin looked perfect in the online photos. Rustic but modern, with a private dock, hot tub, and enough space for all of us to spread out comfortably. The owner, a man named Dale Hutchins, had excellent reviews and communicated promptly about the rental details. Everything seemed legitimate and professional. We arrived on Friday afternoon, me, my boyfriend Marcus, our friends Emma and David, who were newly engaged, Jake and his girlfriend Sophia, and my college roommate Lisa, who was going through a rough divorce and needed the break. The weather was perfect, mid-80s with clear skies, and the lake was like glass reflecting the surrounding pine trees. The cabin was even better than the photos suggested. Spacious kitchen, comfortable bedding, a wraparound deck with stunning views. Dale had left a welcome basket with local wine and homemade cookies, along with a detailed guide to the area's hiking trails and restaurants. He seemed like the perfect host. That first evening was magical. We grilled steaks on the deck, opened bottle after bottle of wine, and stayed up until dawn sharing stories and planning our lives together. Marcus and I had been talking about getting engaged, and being surrounded by our closest friends in such a beautiful setting made everything feel possible. Saturday was equally perfect. We spent the morning on the lake, some of us kayaking, others just floating on inflatable rafts with drinks in hand. The water was crystal clear and surprisingly warm for a mountain lake. Emma and David disappeared for a long hike, coming back flushed and happy, probably having found some private spot to be romantic. Jake taught Sophia how to fish from the dock while Lisa and I caught up on months of drama from her divorce proceedings. As evening approached, We decided to have a bonfire on the small beach area near the cabin. Dale had left detailed instructions about fire safety and where to find seasoned wood. Everything was planned out, thoughtful, perfect. That's when we first noticed the cameras. Marcus spotted the first one while gathering firewood from the shed behind the cabin. It was small, black, and mounted discreetly under the eaves, the kind of outdoor security camera you might expect at a vacation rental. But it was pointed directly at the hot tub area, not at the approaches to the property like you'd expect for security purposes. Probably just monitoring for property damage, Emma said when we mentioned it. Vacation rental owners have to protect themselves from party animals who trash places. But Jake, who worked in IT security, was more suspicious. He started looking around the property systematically and found 5 more cameras, all positioned to watch the outdoor areas where guests would relax, swim, or use the hot tub. None of them were mentioned in the rental agreement or property description. "This is creepy," Lisa said. "We should call Dale and ask about them." I tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. His return call came 20 minutes later. "Oh, those," Dale said when I asked about the cameras. "Security system. Don't worry, they only record if there's motion detected during non-rental periods. They're not active while guests are staying there." His explanation seemed reasonable, though Jake still looked skeptical. We decided to enjoy our weekend and not let paranoia ruin our vacation. After all, we were only there for 2 more days. Sunday morning, Sophia made a discovery that changed everything. She was the earliest riser among us, always up before dawn to do yoga and watch the sunrise. She'd found a perfect spot on the far side of the cabin, secluded and peaceful, where she could practice without disturbing anyone. That's where she found the hidden camera. This one wasn't a standard security device. It was a tiny, sophisticated piece of equipment, almost invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. And it was positioned to capture a perfect view of the bedroom windows, specifically the master bedroom where Marcus and I were staying. Jake examined it with a flashlight and his phone's magnifying app. "This is professional surveillance equipment," he said, his voice tight with anger. "High-definition, wireless transmission, probably night vision capable. This isn't about property security. Someone is watching guests for other reasons." We searched the entire property systematically. What we found made my stomach turn. 12 hidden cameras total, positioned to observe every private area where guests might undress, shower, or be intimate. The bathrooms, bedrooms, even the outdoor shower area. Everything was under surveillance. The equipment was expensive, recently installed, and designed to be completely undetectable to casual observation. But the worst part was what Jake found when he managed to hack into the wireless network the cameras were using. "The feeds are being transmitted in real time," he said, his face pale. "Someone isn't just recording, they're watching live. And based on the network activity, they've been watching since we arrived." The violation felt overwhelming. Every private moment of our weekend, intimate conversations, personal activities, vulnerable moments, had been observed and possibly recorded by some stranger. We'd been completely unaware, completely exposed. I called Dale immediately, but now his phone was disconnected. The number just rang and rang before going to a generic voicemail system. I tried the vacation rental website where I'd originally found the listing, but the property had been removed, as if it had never existed. That's when we realized we weren't just dealing with a creepy voyeur. This was something much more organized and dangerous. Jake managed to trace some of the network data and found that our surveillance feeds were being uploaded to multiple servers simultaneously. "This isn't one pervert with a camera," he said. "This is a distribution network. Our footage is being shared with multiple users, possibly sold." The implications hit us like a physical blow. Not only had our privacy been violated, but recordings of our most intimate moments were now in the hands of strangers who could use them for blackmail, harassment, or worse. Emma started crying, thinking about her teaching career and how any leaked footage could destroy her professionally. David was furious, talking about lawsuits and criminal charges. Lisa was convinced her abusive ex-husband was somehow involved, that this was part of his ongoing campaign to terrorize her. But Marcus made the connection that terrified us most. "How did Dale know we'd use the hot tub?" he asked. "How did he know exactly where to position the cameras for maximum coverage? The angles are too perfect, too strategic. It's like he knew our habits, our preferences." That's when I remembered the detailed questionnaire I'd filled out when booking the cabin. It had seemed like excellent customer service at the time. Questions about our interests, activities we enjoyed, whether we preferred indoor or outdoor relaxation spaces. I'd provided detailed information about our group dynamics, our relationships, even our daily routines. We'd been profiled, selected, and targeted. The cabin wasn't just equipped for surveillance, it was designed for it. Every amenity, every attractive feature, was positioned to maximize our exposure to hidden cameras. The perfect placement of the hot tub, the romantic outdoor shower, the carefully designed sight lines between bedrooms and common areas, it was all intentional. We packed immediately and drove straight to the nearest police station. The officers who took our report were sympathetic, but not particularly surprised. "We've been getting reports about this kind of thing for the past year," Detective Morrison told us. "Vacation rental properties equipped with hidden surveillance equipment. The perpetrators are getting more sophisticated, more organized. They target specific types of groups, young professionals, couples on romantic getaways, bachelorette parties." What made our case particularly disturbing was the level of premeditation involved. This wasn't opportunistic voyeurism. It was a carefully planned operation designed to harvest intimate footage for commercial exploitation. The investigation revealed the full scope of the horror. Dale Hutchins wasn't the real property owner. The actual owners, an elderly couple from Seattle, had no idea their cabin was being used for this purpose. Their property had been illegally sublet by someone who'd gained access through a fake rental management company. The surveillance equipment was worth over $50,000, professional-grade cameras, sophisticated transmission systems, cloud storage networks capable of handling multiple live feeds simultaneously. This was a significant criminal enterprise, not some amateur operation. Most disturbing was what they found on the servers. Hundreds of hours of footage from dozens of different properties, featuring hundreds of victims who had no idea they'd been recorded. Young couples on honeymoons, families with children, groups of friends like us, all violated in the same systematic way. The footage was being sold on dark web marketplaces, traded among networks of voyeurs, and used for blackmail schemes targeting victims in sensitive professional positions. Our weekend getaway had fed into a massive industry built on violating people's most private moments. The psychological impact has been devastating. Emma quit her teaching job and moved back in with her parents, convinced that someone at her school had seen the footage. David broke off his engagement, unable to handle the violation and Emma's subsequent breakdown. Jake has become obsessively paranoid about surveillance, covering every camera and microphone in his apartment with tape. Lisa's worst fears were confirmed when her ex-husband somehow obtained screenshots from our weekend and used them in their custody battle, claiming she was living an inappropriate lifestyle. Sophia developed severe anxiety and can't travel anywhere without conducting extensive security sweeps. Marcus and I are still together, but the experience has changed us fundamentally. We can't be intimate without wondering who might be watching, can't relax in any hotel or rental property without searching for hidden cameras. The simple pleasure of a romantic getaway has been poisoned forever. The worst part is knowing that this is happening to other people right now. Despite the investigation, despite multiple arrests, the industry continues to grow. New properties are being equipped with surveillance systems, new victims are being targeted and exploited, and the footage continues to circulate on platforms that law enforcement can't fully shut down. Detective Morrison told us that our case was particularly valuable because we discovered the surveillance system while it was active and managed to gather evidence before the perpetrators could cover their tracks. Most victims never know they've been recorded until footage surfaces months or years later, if ever. But knowing that our violation helped expose a larger criminal network doesn't make the experience any less traumatic. We were carefully selected targets in an operation designed to exploit our trust, our relationships, and our most vulnerable moments. The cabin is still there, still beautiful, still reflected perfectly in Pine Lake's clear water. The real owners have removed all the surveillance equipment and plan to sell the property, unable to use it themselves knowing what happened there. But I can't help wondering how many other properties are out there. How many other perfect weekend getaways are actually elaborate traps designed to harvest the most intimate moments of people's lives. If you're planning a vacation rental stay, take Jake's advice. Assume you're being watched. Check for hidden cameras, cover potential observation points, and remember that the perfect host offering the perfect property at the perfect price might have motives that have nothing to do with hospitality. Our summer weekend in paradise turned into a nightmare that will follow us for the rest of our lives. We thought we were escaping from the world for a few days of privacy and connection with the people we loved most. Instead, we became unwilling performers in someone else's twisted entertainment. Our most private moments transformed into commodities to be bought, sold, and traded by strangers. The horror isn't supernatural or psychological. It's human greed and exploitation in its most invasive form. And it's happening to ordinary people who just want to create beautiful memories with the people they love. Be careful out there. The perfect vacation might be someone else's perfect opportunity to violate everything you hold private and sacred. My name is Jessica Torres, and I survived the Pine Lake cabin rental. I'm sharing this story because I don't want anyone else to go through what we experienced. Check for cameras. Question perfect deals. Trust your instincts. And remember that sometimes the real monsters are the ones who smile and welcome you to paradise. It started in March when I was desperate for summer work. My parents had made it clear that if I wanted to keep my car and have spending money for my sophomore year at college, I needed to find something that paid well. Most of my friends were settling for minimum wage jobs at retail stores or restaurants, but I wanted something better. That's when I found the posting on a job board at school. Summer Camp Counselor, Wilderness Adventure Program. $800 per week plus room and board. Seeking responsible college students for exclusive outdoor education experience. Remote location, incredible scenery, life-changing opportunity. The pay was almost too good to be true, but the company seemed legitimate. Mountain Vista Youth Programs had a professional website, glowing testimonials from former counselors, and photos of beautiful wilderness settings with happy kids engaged in outdoor activities. The application process was thorough: background checks, references, a lengthy interview via video call with the program director, Mrs. Catherine Morse. Mrs. Morse was exactly what you'd expect from someone running a wilderness program for privileged kids. Mid-50s, athletic build, the kind of confident outdoors woman who probably had a dozen certifications in wilderness survival and youth psychology. She asked intelligent questions about my experience with kids, my comfort level in remote settings, and my ability to handle emergencies. "This isn't a typical summer camp, Tyler," she explained during our interview. "Our clients pay premium rates for an authentic wilderness experience. These children come from very wealthy families who want them to develop character, self-reliance, and appreciation for nature. The work is demanding, but the rewards are significant." She told me the program operated from a private ranch in remote Colorado, accessible only by a long dirt road that required four-wheel drive. The isolation was part of the appeal. Kids would be completely disconnected from technology and modern distractions, forced to engage with nature and each other in meaningful ways. I was hired along with 7 other college students from across the country. We were told to report to a meeting point in Grand Junction, Colorado, on June 15th, where transportation would be provided to the ranch. Everything seemed professional and well organized. The other counselors were impressive: education majors from good schools, experienced camp counselors, outdoor enthusiasts with wilderness certifications. Sarah from Vermont had spent 2 summers working at exclusive camps in Maine. Mike from Oregon was an Eagle Scout with EMT training. Jennifer from Texas had a degree in child psychology and spoke fluent Spanish. We clicked immediately during the drive to the ranch, sharing stories about our college experiences and expectations for the summer. The van ride took 3 hours through increasingly remote terrain, winding mountain roads that eventually became rough dirt tracks through dense forest. When we finally arrived at the Mountain Vista facility, it was breathtaking. A collection of rustic but well-maintained buildings nestled in a valley surrounded by towering peaks. Solar panels provided electricity. There was a clear mountain stream running through the property, and the main lodge looked like something from a luxury outdoor magazine. Mrs. Morse gave us a comprehensive tour, showing us the counselor cabins, dining facilities, activity areas, and the dormitory buildings where the kids would stay. Everything was thoughtfully designed, from the outdoor amphitheater for evening programs to the challenge course built among the pine trees. "The first group of children arrives tomorrow," she told us during our orientation meeting. 12 kids, ages 10 to 14, staying for 4 weeks. Their parents are paying $8,000 each for this experience, so our standards are extremely high. She handed out detailed schedules, emergency procedures, and behavioral guidelines. The daily routine seemed intensive but reasonable: early morning hikes, outdoor skills training, team-building activities, evening reflection sessions. The kids would be challenged but safe, pushed to grow but not endangered. The children arrived the next morning in 2 black SUVs with tinted windows. That should have been my first red flag, but at the time I assumed it was just how wealthy families transported their kids, discreet, secure, professional. But when the kids got out of the vehicles, something felt wrong. They were too quiet, too compliant. 12 children between 10 and 14 should have been excited, nervous, asking questions, showing some kind of emotional response to being dropped off at a remote wilderness camp. Instead, they lined up silently, following instructions with an unnatural precision that made my skin crawl. Even stranger, none of the parents had come to drop them off. The drivers were adult strangers who handed over paperwork to Mrs. Morse and left immediately without speaking to the children. No tearful goodbyes, no last-minute instructions, no visible connection between the adults and kids at all. These children come from very structured backgrounds, Mrs. Morse explained when I asked about the unusual drop-off procedure. Their families believe in building independence through clear boundaries and expectations. Emotional displays are discouraged. The kids themselves seemed normal enough once we started activities. They had names, personalities, individual quirks, and preferences. Emma was 12 and loved rock climbing. David was 10 and knew an incredible amount about birds. Sophia was 14 and had read every book in our camp library within the first week. But there were strange inconsistencies. Emma claimed to be from New York, but didn't recognize basic NYC landmarks when Sarah mentioned them. David's extensive knowledge about birds didn't extend to the specific species we were seeing daily in Colorado. Sophia's reading preferences seemed random, like she was working through a checklist rather than following genuine interests. More disturbing was their behavior during our evening reflection sessions. Mrs. Morse would ask them to share their thoughts about the day's activities, and their responses sounded scripted, rehearsed. They used sophisticated vocabulary that seemed beyond their years, but expressed emotions that felt hollow and artificial. Today's rappelling exercise helped me understand the importance of trusting my support systems while maintaining personal responsibility for my safety, 10-year-old Marcus said one evening. It was the kind of language you'd find in a corporate team-building manual, not something a child would naturally say. Today's rappelling exercise helped me understand the importance of trusting my support systems while maintaining personal responsibility for my safety, 10-year-old Marcus said one evening. It was the kind of language you'd find in a corporate team-building manual, not something a child would naturally say. The other counselors and I started comparing notes. Sarah noticed that none of the kids had typical childhood scars, bruises, or imperfections. They all looked remarkably healthy and well-maintained. Mike observed that their outdoor skills progressed unusually quickly, as if they were remembering rather than learning. Jennifer was disturbed by their complete lack of homesickness or emotional attachment to family. It's like they're performing childhood instead of living it, she told us during one of our late-night conversations in the counselor cabin. But the real horror began during our 3rd week, when I discovered what was happening during the overnight solo camping experiences. Each child was supposed to spend one night alone in the wilderness as a culmination of their outdoor skills training. It was presented as a major milestone, a chance for them to prove their self-reliance and connect with nature on a deeper level. The kids seemed excited about it in their strange, artificial way. I was assigned to monitor David's solo camp from a distance, ensuring his safety while allowing him to have an authentic wilderness experience. His campsite was in a clearing about a mile from the main facility, accessible by a narrow trail that wound through dense forest. At midnight, I heard voices coming from David's campsite. That was concerning. He was supposed to be alone, and the nearest counselor monitoring station was half a mile away. I crept closer to investigate, expecting to find that another child had snuck out to join him. Instead, I found David having a detailed conversation with 3 adults I'd never seen before. They weren't camp staff. Mrs. Morse had introduced us to everyone working at the facility, and these were strangers, professional-looking people in expensive outdoor gear, speaking with David like they'd known him for years. I hid behind a fallen log and listened to their conversation. What I heard made my blood run cold. They were debriefing David about his experiences at the camp, asking specific questions about our daily routines, security procedures, and the behavior of counselors. David answered with the kind of detailed precision that suggested extensive training in observation and reporting. Tyler showed signs of suspicion during yesterday's hiking activity, David reported. He asked multiple questions about my family background and seemed unsatisfied with my responses. Sarah has been documenting inconsistencies in our group behavioral patterns. Mike attempted to examine our medical records without authorization. This wasn't a child reporting on camp activities. This was professional surveillance, delivered by someone who looked 10 years old, but spoke with the analytical precision of an adult intelligence operative. The adults took notes, asked follow-up questions, and provided David with new instructions for the remaining week of camp. They discussed maintaining cover, data collection objectives, and extraction procedures with the casual efficiency of people planning a business meeting. When their conversation ended, the adults disappeared into the forest with practiced stealth. David calmly returned to his tent and went to sleep as if nothing had happened. I spent the rest of the night in a state of shock, trying to process what I'd witnessed. The children weren't children at all. They were adult operatives of some kind, possibly foreign agents, using sophisticated disguises and acting techniques to infiltrate American institutions. But infiltrate for what purpose? What could they possibly learn from a wilderness camp that would justify such an elaborate operation? The answer became clear over the next few days as I started paying closer attention to their questions and interests. They weren't just observing the camp, they were studying us, the counselors. Every conversation was an intelligence-gathering operation designed to understand how young Americans think, behave, and respond to authority. They were particularly interested in our backgrounds, our families, our political views, our social media habits, our plans for the future. Information that could be used to identify potential recruits, vulnerabilities, or pressure points for future operations. Sarah had mentioned that her father worked for the State Department. Mike's uncle was a colonel in the Army. Jennifer's mother was a federal judge. I realized we hadn't been hired randomly. We'd been specifically selected because of our family connections to government and military institutions. The summer camp was a sophisticated intelligence operation designed to study and potentially compromise the children of American officials and military personnel. The fake children were gathering information that could be used for blackmail, recruitment, or targeted attacks against our families. I tried to convince the other counselors, but my story sounded insane. Adult spies disguised as children? Elaborate foreign intelligence operations run from a wilderness camp? It was the kind of paranoid fantasy that belonged in a spy thriller, not real life. But Jennifer agreed to help me investigate. We started documenting everything, the kids' inconsistent backstories, their unusual behavioral patterns, the sophisticated questions they asked during seemingly innocent conversations. That's when we discovered the hidden surveillance equipment. Every building, every activity area, every supposedly private space was monitored by hidden cameras and microphones. Our personal conversations, our fears and doubts, our family information, everything was being recorded and transmitted somewhere. The camp wasn't just gathering intelligence about us. It was creating detailed psychological profiles that could be used to manipulate or compromise us for years to come. We planned to escape and contact the authorities, but Mrs. Morse was one step ahead of us. She called an emergency staff meeting and announced that the program was ending early due to unexpected circumstances. "I'm afraid we've received reports of a potential security threat in the area," she said with convincing concern. "For everyone's safety, we're evacuating the facility immediately. Transportation has been arranged to take you back to Grand Junction tonight." But I noticed that while the counselors were being evacuated, the children were staying behind. They stood quietly by the main lodge, watching us pack with the same artificial expressions they'd worn all summer. As our van pulled away from the facility, I looked back and saw the 12 fake children dropping their performances completely. They stood like adults, moved like adults, spoke to Mrs. Morse with the professional demeanor of colleagues completing a successful mission. The van driver took us to Grand Junction as promised, but something was wrong. Instead of dropping us at the original meeting point, he took us to a remote industrial facility on the outskirts of town. That's where they tried to kill us. The building was empty except for several armed men who were clearly expecting us. They separated us immediately, and I never saw the other counselors again. I was locked in a windowless room while they decided what to do with witnesses who had discovered too much. I only escaped because of pure luck. A gas leak in the building forced an emergency evacuation, and in the confusion, I managed to slip away and make it to the main road. A passing truck driver found me half dead from exposure and dehydration and brought me to the hospital. The authorities investigated, of course, but they found nothing. The Mountain Vista facility was abandoned, all equipment removed, no trace of the operation I'd described. The other counselors had simply vanished. Their families were told they'd left the job early, and decided to travel before returning to school. The website I'd originally found the job posting on no longer existed. Mrs. Catherine Morse had no traceable background or credentials. The bank accounts used to pay our salaries were closed and untraceable. It was as if the entire summer program had been an elaborate hallucination, except for the psychological trauma that still wakes me up screaming most nights. But I know what I saw. I know those weren't children, and I know the operation was real. Somewhere out there, sophisticated intelligence operations are using American summer camps, internship programs, and educational opportunities as cover for activities designed to compromise our national security. They're studying us, learning our weaknesses, identifying our vulnerabilities, and they're getting better at it every year. The perfect summer job was actually a recruitment test for something far more dangerous than I could have imagined. I was supposed to be one of the counselors who disappeared, another young American whose knowledge and connections could be exploited by foreign agents. Instead, I'm the only witness to an operation that most people will never believe existed. But I'm telling this story anyway, because somewhere out there, other college students are applying for summer jobs that seem too good to be true. Other young Americans are being targeted for their family connections and personal vulnerabilities. And other fake children are practicing their performances, preparing to spend months studying their targets with the patience and precision of professional spies. My name is Tyler Chin. I'm 19 years old, and I survived the Mountain Vista Youth Program. If you're looking for summer work, be careful of opportunities that seem perfect. Check references thoroughly. Ask hard questions about funding sources and organizational backgrounds. And remember that sometimes the most innocent-looking situations hide the most dangerous realities. The children aren't always who they appear to be, and neither are the adults who hire you to watch them.